Welcome to your next challenge. Check string for spaces. The directions are to create a function that returns true if a string contains any spaces. And let's take a quick look at the example to make sure that we understand. You can see example 1 is false. It's all filled with text. But you do get a true result with example 2. There's a space here after the comma. Same with example 3, it's only a space. And then examples 4 and 5 are false. Don't be fooled by the empty string. There's no space here. This is empty. And then you have just a bunch of punctuation characters in the final example. So I think that's pretty clear what they're looking for. You just have to find any space contained within the text. If there's any, meaning one or more, return true. So on to the code. If you'd like to have a go at it, now's the time to pause the video. Okay, like with previous challenges, I'll start with a kind of more naive implementation, which works and is probably easier to understand and doesn't seem like a huge jump if I go right into a shorter solution. So, with that said, for each, I'm going to basically iterate over the string, and the string is a collection of characters. So you could think of those string examples like hello before would consist of 5 characters, H, E, L, L, O. And we say characters because it's not just letters. They could be numbers, punctuation marks, spaces, all sorts of crazy things. If you ever want to look up Unicode characters, you can see international symbols and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, we'll iterate over the string, and this will allow us to examine each character one by one. So I'll call it char C in string. So here what I did, character is a type, it's a native type, and that's what each character in the string is. And this is just a name we give it. I called it C here for short, but you could call it really anything you want. You could call it character, call it Joe, call it anything you want. The key is to keep things simple. And we'll put these curly braces in to define the scope of this statement. Then everything we want to do in here, we can write on multiple lines, and this scope defines our boundary for this for each loop. So with each character, in this case, we're going to check C is equal to, I'm just going to look for a space. That was the objective of this one. If it does, we'll return true and we're done with the whole thing. Because remember, if we have one occurrence of a space, we're good and we're out. So we essentially allow that to process through the entire string, each character. If any of them hit as a space, we return true and we're out. If we happen to cycle through the entire string and never meet this condition of finding a space, then eventually when the loop's done, we know all letters or characters have been checked, and we're simply going to return false. So let's run a check on this. Okay, we got an error, and I purposely introduced something subtle to invoke this error and see if hopefully you caught it, or if you want, pause the video and catch it now. But the problem here is that I use double quotes for the space. Double quotes define a string, and remember we said C was of type char, and characters, in case you didn't know, are defined by single quotes. So this is a legitimate comparison. We're comparing apples to apples here. Before I had a character against a string. That doesn't make sense. It'd be like comparing any other different type. It's hard to make sense of that. And so if I run this, it should be happy. Okay, good. We passed. We simply ran through each character in the string. Checking for spaces. Now there's a cleaner way to do this that we'll look at next. And we can simply go, the string class gives us a handy feature property. We can simply go string contains a space. And in this case, I'm passing it a string, so this contains method can search for substrings within the string that you refer to. And I think this, but remember I almost made another big mistake. We got to return that because we're expecting a Boolean. So we can try it this way. And that's happy too, and isn't this nice? It's probably more expressive than the longer code I wrote before, and it's just short. It's very clear what it's doing. If the string contains a space, it's very, very readable, very short. This is definitely an improvement. And I know I've mentioned referring to documentation a lot and how you can find these things, so I figured I'd look at the string class quickly. This is the Microsoft documents. You can search for really anything you want. This happens to be the string class. Contains method. And notice there are 4 variations here. These are called overloads. When you have multiple versions of a function that have the same name, notice they're all called contains, but they take differing parameters, and that's what makes the contains method overloaded. As soon as you have more than one of it, it's considered overloaded. Like I said, we used in our example this one that took a string as an argument. We could have passed it a character as well. There's an overload for that. If you click on it, you can get a quick overview of what it does. It tells you what it returns. Oftentimes what I like are the examples. Sometimes the descriptions can be a little confusing, so I'll go look at an example, and that usually makes it pretty clear when I see it in action. But yeah, you should become friends with this website and be referring to this regularly. So, technically we could stop here. That'd be good. I do think there are some concerns about what it means to be a space. So there are various kinds of spaces. For example, a tab character could be considered white space, but we didn't get any examples of that, if you remember the result. Okay, the test cases here. Yeah, they don't really test that theory, and I think a better test setup would. They would put tabs in here, maybe new line characters, which is like when you hit return, to sort of make sure it does entirely what you want it to. This example's simple enough, and where we can get by with this, but and this is part of understanding the problem. You need to make sure that you do, and if you don't, then you find out from whoever you're working for what kind of behavior they expect for this. So there is another way we could do it that might be a little more robust. Try that. Char is white space. So we're going to use some advanced topics here, and you don't have to understand them yet. I'm leveraging some other libraries that you can get with C#. I'm bringing in the link for this any method, and I'm using system for the char struct. If we check this, it's just as good, and this might handle some other cases besides just simply a space. It could handle multiple spaces and things like that. So anyway, there's a few different ways to do it. I hope this was helpful. As usual, leave your comments below. Thank you.